Welcome to our course about cannabis awareness. How does cannabis affect workplace safety? That's the big question we will answer in this course. Companies and workers need to abide by the laws and rules where they reside, travel, and conduct business. This course does not address what's legal or moral. Instead, we will focus on cannabis in the context of workplace safety. Does the legalization of cannabis give workers the right to use it while on the job? It's okay if you aren't sure. We'll explain the correct answer. If a worker tests positive for cannabis, does that mean he or she is impaired? Cannabis testing results only confirm if a person has used cannabis recently. A positive test result does not necessarily mean the person was impaired at the time of the test. That's why it is so important that you be aware of the warning signs of impairment and act immediately if you observe them. By the end of this course, you will be able to recall the properties of cannabis, recognize how cannabis may affect users, recall potential consequences of working while impaired, and identify strategies that may help workers avoid potential problems. If you are not familiar with cannabis or it is newly legalized in your area, you may have some questions about it. It's important to educate yourself so that you can make informed choices. If you are not familiar with cannabis or it is newly legalized in your area, you may have some questions about it. It's important to educate yourself so that you can make informed choices. Select the topics to learn about the properties of cannabis. The effects of cannabis vary by person and plant characteristics as well as method of consumption. People may have varying metabolisms, physical and mental health conditions, and medications that may impact how they react to cannabis. Some strains of cannabis have a higher concentration of THC than others. The strains used to make hemp products, for example, have little to no psychoactive effects. The sativa plant often has lower doses of CBD and higher doses of THC, while indica strains often have higher levels of CBD, but the THC content isn't necessarily less. A third type of cannabis is ruderalis, and this strain typically has little THC and higher amounts of CBD, but it may not be enough to produce any effects. As you will see later in the course, different consumption methods may cause THC to remain in the body for different amounts of time. For example, ingesting cannabis may cause THC to remain in the body longer than smoking it. Common effects of THC may include a sense of relaxation, heightened sensory perception, laughter, altered perception of time, and an increased appetite. Pleasant experiences are not universal. Instead of relaxation, some people experience anxiety, fear, distrust, or panic. The THC in cannabis can cause physiological changes such as slower reaction time, reduced hand and eye coordination, clumsiness, altered perceptions of time and distance, difficulty concentrating, learning, and remembering, confusion, faster heart rate, increased blood pressure, dry mouth, and red or bloodshot eyes. Cannabis often produces a pungent skunk-like odor and may be pleasing to users but nauseating to others. A person who is high on cannabis may be unusually talkative, secretive, or misjudge time. Sometimes individuals fall behind in their studies or stop activities that they usually enjoy on a daily basis. Cannabis can also stimulate hunger, so users experience an increase in cravings for snacks. How long do you think the physiological effects of smoking cannabis typically last? The effects of THC typically last 2 to 4 hours after someone inhales cannabis smoke or vapors. When someone ingests cannabis, the effects take longer to start and may last 4 or more hours. The brain and fatty tissues may also store compounds that can cause subtle effects for days after use and cause positive THC test results, even if psychological or physical effects are not apparent. So, how long after use can THC be detected in drug tests? THC, unlike alcohol and many other drugs, is highly fat-soluble, meaning it's stored in fat tissue. After being stored there, it is slowly metabolized by the body, and thus takes a long time before it's eliminated from the body. That's why drug tests can detect THC long after someone is actually impaired by the substance. Depending on the bodily substance examined, THC is metabolized at different rates and for varying durations. Breath provides the shortest cannabis detection time of 2 to 3 hours. THC stays in saliva up to 24 hours, blood up to 3 weeks, and urine up to 1 month. Hair testing can detect THC for 90 days after it enters your body. The way someone uses cannabis, inhalation or ingestion, frequency and dose, and individual factors such as body mass index or BMI may influence time frames for detection. Testing positive means that the test recorded a threshold quantity of THC. Positive test results are reliable indicators of use. Employers and authorities may need more information to prove substance-related impairment. Some jurisdictions recommend not driving or operating machinery for 6 hours after inhaling or 9 hours after ingesting cannabis products. Workers who perform safety-sensitive tasks, such as driving vehicles, operating machines, or heavy equipment, or handling hazardous materials, need to abstain from using any THC-containing substances. As with many substances, regular use can result in dependence. In cannabis, the THC and its compounds affect the brain's dopamine receptors, which contribute to feelings of pleasure and satisfaction. With repeated or unmoderated use, the brain begins to expect those sensations and react to the withdrawal if it doesn't receive them. How do you recognize dependence on cannabis? You may notice people using cannabis in larger amounts or over a longer period than was prescribed or intended. They may lead to unsuccessful attempts to reduce or control their cannabis use. They may also spend more and more money or time on activities necessary to obtain or use cannabis or recover from its effects. THC withdrawal symptoms may include irritability, irregular moods and sleep difficulties, decreased appetite, cravings, restlessness, and various forms of physical discomfort. Cannabis smoke contains tar and other chemicals, such as carbon monoxide, which can be harmful to your health in high concentrations. Whether smoking cannabis causes lung cancer and heart disease, as cigarette smoking does, remains an open question. The vaping industry is also full of unknowns. However, research has shown that additives used in vaping products result in harmful toxins for users. The terpenes used to make cannabis and tobacco vape liquids can have harmful effects on an individual's health and of the known toxins formed during vaping. More toxins may come from terpenes than from THC. Repeated or unmoderated use of cannabis can cause the brain to become dependent on which chemical and its compounds as a source of pleasure or satisfaction. Employer policies are a condition of employment. They can supersede local laws when the policies are more stringent. For example, a policy cannot say something illegal is allowed at work, but it can say that people in sensitive positions cannot use substances, even when they are legal. In some countries, employers can have policies prohibiting possession and use of cannabis at the workplace. One way that employers may address cannabis in the workplace is to have a policy that bans all types of smoking and vaping at work. So if a worker is smoking or vaping, the employer doesn't even have to know what the substance is in order to determine if it violates policy. Think about people who work in safety-sensitive positions, such as commercial drivers, pilots, aviation mechanics, and pipeline operators. When things go wrong for these people, everyone around them is at risk. For this reason, the government has regulations, and employers often put even more stringent requirements in place to ensure safety. People who work in safety-sensitive positions should never use cannabis. Even if they don't seem impaired, the risk is too great. That is why merely testing positive for threshold quantities may cost someone his or her job. They may even lose their professional license if found positive. Employers are required by law to provide a workplace that is free from recognized hazards. Employers are obligated to intervene if they suspect impairment. The company policy should contain more information about what forms intervention may take. When a substance is legal, people may think that means that it is harmless. We know that this is not the case. Alcohol and prescription drugs are legal, but they can impair people and cause them to make dangerous decisions. The same is true of cannabis. Regardless of one's personal views, the bottom line is that working while under the influence can endanger your personal safety and the safety of those around you. Abide by the laws and rules in effect where you live, work, and travel. Abide by your employer's policies. And, as always, exercise good judgment and do not work while you are under the influence of cannabis or any other substance. In addition, it is dangerous to mix cannabis with other drugs and substances. For example, mixing cannabis with alcohol increases impairment greater than the effects of each substance taken alone. Select the link to view, save, or print a poster that answers frequently asked questions about cannabis in the workplace. Check with your employer before you post or distribute it at work. Feel free to share it with your friends and family who may have questions about cannabis in the workplace. True or false? Employers may ban all types of smoking and vaping in the workplace. One strategy to help keep the workplace safe is for employers to ban all smoking and vaping, including tobacco, cannabis, and other substances in the workplace. Even if cannabis use is legal, some jurisdictions may allow employers to ban it entirely, including smoking, ingesting, and other consumption. In others, the law may require that the employer accommodate people who use cannabis by transferring them to positions that are not safety sensitive. It's up to each employer to know what is allowed and work within those parameters to keep everyone safe. Recognizing how cannabis may affect users may be easy in theory, but what does it look like on the job? Let's find out by exploring some scenarios. Select the Next button when you are ready to begin. A group of forklift operators goes out to lunch. After lunch, Tony offers the others cannabis gummies from a package he has in the glove compartment of his vehicle. After some discussion, it's decided that a few gummies aren't going to hurt anyone and might even make for a more enjoyable afternoon. They enjoy Tony's generosity. Returning to work, a couple people are feeling the effects, but no one wants to look like they can't handle it, so everyone goes right back to work, unaware that Jill from the front office is in the warehouse looking for inventory information. Jill steps out from behind a double stack of pallets and is struck by a forklift. Could Jill being struck by the forklift be attributed to the cannabis edibles taken after lunch? Ingested THC takes hours to be fully metabolized, so it may still have been in the forklift operator's system at work. Depending on the amount and concentration of THC in the gummy, this certainly could contribute to inattention and cognitive impairment. Alex works as a lab technician at a medical sample testing facility. On Saturday night, he attends a concert at which the people near his group are smoking weed. When he comes home, his clothes still carry the scent. He changes and showers before going to bed. Monday morning at the lab, a coworker prevents Alex from making a mistake labeling a test tube. He continues working. Is it likely that the secondhand cannabis smoke from the concert caused Alex to make the labeling mistake a few days later? Remember that the effects of THC typically last 2 to 4 hours after someone smokes or inhales cannabis. Since it's been a few days since Alex was exposed, it's unlikely that his mistake was due to intoxication. You should now be able to recall the properties of cannabis, recognize how cannabis may affect users, recall potential consequences of working while impaired, and identify strategies that may help workers avoid potential problems.